going on? The lighting is not worth a hoot from there. I don't much like that. Let's see. Any better? From there. Sorry, guys. I probably should have checked all this lighting stuff before I started the live feed, but you know me, and I'm always unprepared. What's going on, Billy? Um, I am gonna do a bunch of rigging displays and stuff today. I'm just gonna. This is episode 19 of Tree Talk. Um, so far, we've been every week. I did 2 last week, but we didn't count that rig and wrench one. But on this one, I'm gonna show you exact examples of. How you been, Billy? I'm gonna show you examples. I want to do positive rigging. I want to do negative rigging, span rigging, balanced rigging, like or with a spider leg, and I want to show tip tie, end overs, like the differences between and like the dangers and stuff to look out for, because all of those, you set them up the wrong way, you can get hurt. And then I want to do endless loop, because I seen it being used. Well, I seen a rigging technique being used, but it wasn't what they called it. So I want to show a few examples. This setup should work pretty good for it. I spent a little time setting everything up. So yeah, we'll get into it. How you doing, Dan? We're just going to do a bunch of rigging displays and stuff today. So here's how I'm going to do it. I have a bunch of these. So we're going to basically use these as rigging rings. Squirrely John, how are you? Yeah, happy Saturday. So I have a bunch of different ones. I have a couple that are longer. I have a single ended one. And yeah, so I have them all kind of hooked up throughout this. Um, let's see. How do we want to do this first? Okay, so we'll do this. I'll move you guys in a little closer. And the first thing we're going to get into is looking at a tree, because the first thing I do as soon as I get there, I'm like, what am I going to do as far as a rigging setup, especially if I know I'm going to do a bunch of rigging. I just want to try my best to keep up with comments too as I'm going here. But you see the make and like the structure of this tree. It goes up here. So your main stem, unless you're dealing with pine trees and stuff all the time, it's not one straight stalk and rungs of limbs. So the figuring out the best layout is a lot of times the trick, and get the most strength out of the top, because then you can rig bigger, go bigger, and get home quicker. For a lot of us, that's what we're trying to do almost every time. So this one goes up and dog legs hard to the right. So down here, I have a rigging ring that we're going to pretend is like the bollard. And I have this like screw right here that I'll actually anchor the rope off to. But then I have our rigging rope. And you know me, I love a beaner at the end. So we even have a beaner on it. So there's our clip. So as I'm setting my rigging up, and if I'm going to rig off this main stem, I want to make sure that my first ring will direct it down to my lowering device, or to a ring, if you have a ring or whatever you have down here. I want the first ring to direct it down to it and make it nice and smooth. So I would go my bollard up, and I would decide all this from the ground before I ever head up the tree. But now I'm looking at this dog leg. So if I go to rig off of this and I go up here, I set these rings up here. All right, let's flip them over this little stalk. And we set these rings up. Now it's a pretty good setup, but it's going to cause flex and bend right here. It's going to, as this piece comes over, if we hook this piece up and we just go ahead and pull on the rope, you can see the flex that'll end up happening. See, it's lifting here and it's flexing there, and it's kind of putting pressure here. So if I was setting this up, I wouldn't take the risk on this causing me any trouble. And if I was worried about this one breaking, the first thing I would do to make this stronger is go to where it's pulling backwards on it. So I would go from there over to here. So I would set my rings up over on the other side, and you wouldn't have to set them way out here on the ends like you could, but for the sake of the demonstration, I'm going to hook them up there. I'm going to unhook my rope. This would be, if I was going to set this up, this would be my setup. Because I'm worried about that dog leg and that being a potential failure spot right here, and because it's got a bunch of weird unions too, I would go out here. From this one that directs it down, I would go out to here, then I would go up to here. So now what's happening, when we hook a limb up, is where that branch would normally get to pull backwards and it would flex down. As we compress these two limbs here, this point and this point are going to come together when weight drops into it. They help each other. So now we're causing back pull and compression into that. So this whole setup is way stronger right there. So okay, let's just go with, we're dealing with positive rigging. We have a rigging point that is up above whatever it is that we're getting ready to rig. Let's see, I want to try to keep up with comments. Sorry. Oh, what's up, Ground Pounder? How we doing, brother? So now we've got like the max strength out of this thing, which I would be comfortable rigging big now off of this. Though tip tying, I love to use tip tying, and I think it gets overlooked. Most guys think unless you have a super high tie-in point, it's not really worth it, and you don't want to take the risk, and that there's really no advantage. But if you look here, it's too close, sorry. Okay. So now we're going up to there, back over to here, then there, and then we're going to cut this limb here. So if I was going to cut that limb, I want to make sure that let's say there's a house right here. If I want end over with it, it's going to hit. So let's rehook it up as if it was just going to go end over. And we'll cut it. Then we'll set it back up. So if you were here and you want to cut this, it would end up hitting. Like no matter what. So in that situation, I think some guys get worried about what the butt of the limb's going to do when they cut it off. But if you use tip tying enough, you'll start to get familiar with the movements that the limbs do afterwards. So this would be one that I would be definitely comfortable in tip tying. Because what would happen is when I cut this, it's going to basically drop straight down. As long as that cut's made right, it's going to drop perfect into the spot there. So I'm try to see if I can get this thing to balance on there without me holding it. Yeah, whatever. So it comes off, and when it comes off, as long as it don't catch a snag, it's just coming straight off. The butt weight is going to drop that thing out, and then the tips they're going to get a hold of it. The thing you have to watch out for when you're doing tip tie is if you're the climber and you're sitting here and you make the cut, this butt, if you don't make it quick enough or it balances out, it's going to shove it back into you. especially if you're not way out on the tip and you don't got tip tie, you have more like mid tie, you're always going to end up getting gutted. So I think that's what scares a lot of guys off from the tip tie is when they go to cut, now it's closer to that balance point and it shoves it back into you. So the limb would hang more like that as opposed to you want it to be hanging straight up and down. So if you're worried when you're tip tying about possibility of it breaking, you could just slap yourself like you would if you were doing crane work and you're worried about the tip of the limb breaking. You just slap a couple half hitches onto it and it would have a backup for it. So slap a half hitch there and then you can actually clip the thing down into something that you feel more comfortable with. And so then you got it held there on the tip where you want it. But if it was to snap, this holds it. So then you're set back up. You almost want to make that cut and know that this is going to come back a little bit until this tip gets down. And I think the mistake a lot of like guys when they're rigging and you're doing tip tie and where the ground guys got is he starts to let it down too soon. And what happens there is you've lost height now because the only thing you really have to your advantage in that situation is height. You have a good high tie-in and you're tip tied. But that's cool. You know, that's probably my favorite way to rig because as opposed to the limb coming down where it comes crashing down like this, that's kind of nice because if you're in a tight area here, you can bring the limb down standing up and process it. But if it comes down even, like you got it more in the even spot and it comes down, then you have this huge limb that you have to have a bunch of space to set it down. So a lot of times, as long as you make sure you got enough butt weight, you're tip tied and that piece comes down, now it's coming down straight and you can process it in a pretty tight little area and not have a lot of trouble. So that's one of the advantages there. So you want to keep plenty of pressure when you tip tie. Don't let it run, correct? Yeah, 100%. Let me put this where it's a little better lighting. Sorry. So when you're tip tying, you're 100% right. It's hard to explain that. Who was that? Was that Todd? No. My eyes are so bad. 1010. You are right, 1010. That is 100% correct. So height is your best thing that you got. So if we were I could make it make more sense by shortening this so it's not so big. So if we were hooked on here, and this works whether that limb is completely horizontal like this, almost horizontal, or if it's standing upright. So you tighten your stuff up. So if that limb's like that and you was going to cut, it's going to drop down in the system there. And it's going to stay almost oriented the way you had it. Unless, as it's standing there, you cut. And before, this is the thing I tell like a rope guy when he's working for me, is I don't want you to start lowering it until the butt leaves. So I'm cutting, even if it's slivering here, don't. Because I need that height so that I can finish this cut to get the butt weight off and drop the butt weight into the system to direct the rest of the limb. So like you can take a limb that is way like out here and you can actually pull that limb in with the butt weight as you cut it off. If you fast cut and your guy keeps it tight and your rigging point's like over here, as you cut, it'll drop it into the system and away from like if you had a house here. So 100%. You don't want to give up that height until you have a disconnect. As soon as everything's disconnected, because what ends up happening in a lot of them cases is you're like this, you start to cut and your ground guy lowers, it's still attached. So now when you cut this, it slams this crazy shock load into the system and the limb goes back and forth and looks all crazy and stuff. So I hope that made sense. Dano, what's going on? Dan and Ground Pounder just did a video showing what was that? Basically like dual rigging, where you have two rigging points and you're transferring it from one rigging point to the other. And you can cover a lot of ground like they showed. You can cover a lot of area with that. So the tension will create the swing. Yeah, 100%. Depending on where your rigging point's at. So it's always going to go to that rigging point, but you can use the weight to pull the rest of it. So like if this limb was real long, as I go to cut that, it will actually pull it away depending on how far of away of an angle I am. If it's a far angle, it's going to drop down, but you have to remember the butt weight is going to, depending on where you have it hooked, if you have it way up here, it's going to drop to it quicker than if you have it right above the even point, because there's going to be a point here where if you hook up, you're going to be even. You don't want that unless you have a ton of space down there. You want right above it. So if you can get closer to that even, I try to just get up in the tip, because I don't want it to stay even. A lot of times if you're a little off, it'll stay even, then it's hard for the guys to lower it down through a tight area and becomes a bit of a headache. But yeah, that's one of the biggest things, is making sure you don't lose the advantage that you have, which is height on a tip tie, because they're worried about it dropping into the system, because you can create a situation where it ends up dropping more madness into that system than it would have with a smooth cut and it coming off. I hope that makes sense, Tintin. Dano, what up? That was a good job, Dano. Yeah, Phyllis, that was a really good video. I like that. I like that a lot. I love a good rigging setup. So let's pretend. Okay, what else did I have? So positive rigging, okay, is your rigging, and your rigging point is up above it. You have command. The way I look at it is like positive and negative. There's that middle line where you're even. Well, the advantage is in your favor, so it's positive. You have height and you can rig. So you can start to choose what you end up wanting, with tip tying, butt tying. But if you're doing negative rigging, you don't really have those options. So if we're negative rigging, I'm trying to think of how I could do this. Here's what I'll do. We're going to drop this whole thing down a ways, and then we'll take a big chunk off of this. And I would still feel comfortable doing this because I have this backup here that's given the pull in the direction that I would really want. So goes up through here. Now you're hooked up rigging here. Now if we was going to rig this top piece right here out, that would be negative rigging, because now we're rigging something that's above our high point. So the advantage is in the objects like side. So we know that when it falls into the system, that it's going to create a shock load, and it's going to weigh more than it would normally weigh. I think sometimes I hear it said 3 times the weight or something like that. But now in this situation, what you have to remember is where you hook it up on this little piece here is you can make it shock load less and have further of a drop into the system, or you can make it like, you can determine that by where you hook it up. So because we want it to shock it very little, we want to stay as close as we can to the sling with our cutting point as we hook up. So I got these little things here that I made. They're like slings. So that's what we'll do. We'll hook one up here. And then we'll hook our rigging up. Okay, so now we're hooked up on this one. And what's going to happen is it's going to fall into here. This is going to be back over this direction, but the piece is going to fall in, and it's going to fall twice that. Where you're seeing, like where the piece is at, where you're going to cut right here. So that's going to fall. You're thinking like that much. Well, no, it's double that. So it's going to fall that much to get to this point, and then that much at least to get into the system fully. So when that's coming off, this is where when we say let it run, this is what we mean. This is the whole point. I think a lot of maybe guys just don't really understand that, and it takes them quite a while to understand. But it's a bit of a tricky thing. But there's a point there where you need to be proactive on the rope and do the right thing. And that's where you'll be running the rope. What's going on, JP? Doing all right, brother? How are you? Jay, what's going on? So, now, I hope this thing will actually cut this. I don't know if it will. So, it's maybe a little too big. Oh, my. Yeah. All right, so, it's cut. As it falls off, it goes here. But now it's got to go that much more and drop into the system. So actually, I'm going to take it, pretend like we cut it and it comes towards us just for the sake of viewing it. So it comes off here. There's how far it looked like it was going to fall. Well, it's got double that now. So here's where it hits the system, right there. On that whole swing, it's going over. Right about there is where a guy would be letting out on the rope and letting it slide through his fingers, and the object of running a piece is to go from here, you make the cut, it falls into it, and as it gets here, he lets it run through his hands and stops it right before it gets to the ground. So that slow stop onto the system creates you're lessening that shock load. You're taking that bit of shock load away. If you lock it up, then you cause an insane amount of shock load into that system. So right here, if we were doing this one and I didn't have this backup, as this comes over and crashes into the system, if the guy had it locked up down there, it is going to cause so much crazy amount of flex and pull on this section here that I would be afraid of that breaking right there, as if the rope was going straight up to it. So having that bit of a backup helps some. I would even if I had this down here, I would feel a little bit better because it would be causing some compression into it instead of side pull. So I think that basically explains negative rigging. You don't have the advantage, and it's negative because it's going to introduce even more weight than what you're actually rigging because of the amount of shock load that's about to happen. Northern Man. Daniel-san. Like pushing the brakes on your car. 100%. As you're rolling up to a stop, you don't like slam on the brakes and then gas it and slam on the brakes and gas it and slam on the brakes. You ease onto the brakes. And that's what you're doing with the rope. You're holding it tight because when you have it like this, you're going to want to pre-tension that line and take all that stretch out that you can, because that's less of a fall that the piece is going to take. So if you pulled the line tight down here and it compressed this a little bit, you now have the whole system nice and tight instead of loose. And your guy on the ground has a wrap, maybe 2 wraps, depending on the size of the piece. And as it comes over, he's just waiting for that point where it's about halfway in its fall into the, well, I say 3/4 of the way into the fall. So as it's coming over, there's a quarter, there's half, there's 3/4, and that's where you can start to let it down. He'll get the smoothest results. I mean, you can even, I see guys sometimes they're a little bit slow on it, but still that's better than having it locked up completely. They come over and it says bam, and then they start to let it run. So they could let it run. Here's the other thing. They could let it run too soon too, and you lose a bunch of stretch that you have. So if you don't have a bunch of height, as that comes over, if a guy lets it run here, that limb is still traveling outward. So it's going to keep going out here. Where you want it to go, it grabbed in the system now has a hold of it, and it's starting to swing it, and it's downward back to the system because it's falling out of the system, and then it's being pulled back into the system. So if you was to let it out here as it's coming out, and you start to let it out there, this limb's going to travel further away than it normally would if you had a little bit of tension there. It comes over, it's tense, and it starts to pull it back in to the system. So you just have to remember that part. Looking for that bit of pullback, and you know that it's pulling back into this. That's when you can let it run, and you're going to get the smoothest results. This is a tricky thing to try to explain. Like I still feel like I'm maybe not saying it exact, but good explanation. Oh, right on, ground pounder. Yeah, Dano's like comparison of pressing the brakes on your car is a really good one. So we've done positive rigging, we've done negative rigging. Now, what do? Let's do spider leg. So what we got here, I don't even know why that's not one. Oh. So what we have here, does that show good on? Yeah, okay. You can start to see that dog leg even more right there. So yeah, there we go. I don't want to get too far. Tree guy. How to float at branch using 2 ropes. You want to know how to do that? I'm just sitting on the stone. Okay. Well, yeah, William. I seen William. Now I'm like, I forgot to say what's up. What up, William? I see Turtle Man salute. So, tree guy. Yeah, I mean, I'll show you that one in just a second. But what you're wanting to do with that one is a lot of times you're just wanting to catch the piece in this system, and then you have another tree where you have a different rope, and it's like attached. A lot of times, if you put them in 2 different spots, you can suspend the limb like this, which is really nice, and you can go hang it here, then transfer it over where it's held here, and now it's standing upright. So you can like pick which way you do it. Like say you wanted to do it the opposite there, and you tip tied it, it dropped off, and then you have a hold of it here on the other side, and it flips, and now you're there, and you lower it down. But that's a really good trick to know because you don't have to have an insane one over to transfer to a lot of times, as long as you have one of them really good to take all the stress of the shock load and everything. So what I would do in that situation is I wouldn't need as strong of a tree if I have height, and I can lose some height. You just have to remember the distance between the two. The piece will start to fall as it's being transferred. It's going to drop down in height. But if you got like machines like Ground Pounder and Dan had, and you set the system up right, you can actually lift the piece back up if you need, or if you got a CMI rope jack, that's another thing you could use. But let's go into spider leg. So here's what you like, why you would want to use a spider leg. You have this thing set up here, and I'm trying to figure out what I could use like for here. Here's a house. Okay. And you want to cut that whole limb. Probably move these around. Go over the top of that. So you could get away with doing this with a single rope, okay? But the thing is, you need the perfect balance point. You got to figure that out. If I was guessing, you look at diameter of the piece. If it's got a bunch of foliage on the end, that's going to add a bunch of weight. So I would probably be somewhere in here. The problem is if it jumps out, like as you cut it off, if it's actually tip tied, like we were saying before, it drops. So it hits the house. Or you put it a little too far down and you underestimated the tip weight, then it does like a normal limb would and it goes end over, which then that crashes into the house. So here's where normally even myself I would try to find that balancing point and take that risk, but in some cases you can't do that. So that's where normally I would introduce a spider leg then, because I don't want to take the risk and I want to have one point is a balancing point. Okay, so if we're tied one time with one connection, one attachment, it's now got a teetering point where it can do as it pleases. You can also put a rope, a natural crotch, close the stem, high to. Yeah, you could just, especially if you like have high ground over in the other tree, a lot of times as the climber, you can set another rope over in a different tree, or if it's got a huge canopy, you could go to a different part of the canopy and transfer it, which is awesome. So instead of having it on one point and the chance of it tipping being there, I'm going to add another connection point. So instead of this piece where normally if I had it here, it would crash down, or if I had it down here, it's crashing down. I'm taking a risk of one of those two happening, either it going end over or tip tied, and it hits. So I would add a spider leg, and you can make your own spider leg. It's not hard to do. Here's what I come up with. So we have we'll get this close, that way it shows it. Okay. Let me see if I put this over here, it's probably a little easier to see everything. Yeah. Okay, so we have our anchor point right here. This is our clip. And we want to put a spider leg on so we could rig out that branch. And it stretches a long ways out there. So here's what I'd come up with. I'd get a rope. And the thing you want is the diameters to be different. The spider leg, I prefer to be a little smaller than the rope I'm rigging with. And the reason that is if you notice, a climbing prusik is much smaller diameter than most climbing ropes. And there's a reason for that. You get better grab if the diameters are different between the two ropes. So in this situation, we're gonna say this is thinner than this. So I would tie a big loop in the end of my rope. And then it's just a straight rope after that. So you go to your rigging rope, you have them send you this up. I go to it, I try to hide the knot onto it first. And then I start wrapping upward with that loop around the rope as many times as I can with the rope that I got. And then I'm going to take the other end of it that was down here, and I'm going to run it up, and I'm going to go through the loop that you had. It sure is harder to do it with this little like fishing string stuff than it would be normally. I'll try to explain a little better as we get it. So if you look here, it's biting on the end of the loop there. And the reason this works is you took a bunch of wraps all the way around until you got up to here, and then you ran the tail of your rope through that loop. And now it's pulling down on that loop and it's biting all these together. So now you've got what's called a prusik knot tied onto your rigging rope with this spider leg. So now you can adjust this to whatever height you need. So the first thing I'm going to do when I do these is I go set the tail in. Okay. Sorry. When I mean tip, not tail end. So I go set the spider leg that I just connected. I get it out as far as I can because the further I get it out, and that's just a wider spread. Like if you try to balance something and you keep it like this, real close, it's hard to balance something. As you stretch it out and spread your, like same way with your legs. It's harder to stay balanced with your feet together than it is with your legs spread wide open, your hips kind of spread out. So that's what you're trying to do here with your attachment points. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hook this one up first. I wish I would have put a clip on this one too. Sure would make it easy. Alright, so I think I just put a Munter hitch or something like that. I don't even know. Tied it on. Now this one, I would put it where I want it on this to hold the rest of the weight. So I would say I'd want to be somewhere like maybe here. Then what you have to remember is when this goes up in the air and you get that V of between the 2 points, here's the balancing point now. It's in the middle of that V. So that is going to travel over. So this is all going to come this way a little bit, and you just have to remember that. I'll explain it as I set it up here. So now we're hooked up there. And here you have to test these a lot of times because you'll have to adjust this to get the right grab. Here's where you can do some tricks with a spider leg that can help you a lot. So if I go to tighten up, you'll notice somehow I got lucky and just hooked it in the right spot. So both of them, well, that one's kind of loose. That one's kind of a little tighter, but they're pretty even. Like if, let's say, here's a little trick. Like if I wanted to make sure that this didn't get anywhere near going down, and I had a little bit to give here, what I could do is I can take this limb and I can drop part of it down too. So I can take this butt, drop it down a little bit, while that'll go up in the air a little bit. So I can use them to work against each other or with each other and make it do different things with this too. So if I wanted to do that, if I wanted to float and lift that a little bit and then swing it in, I would leave this one a little loose and I'd make sure this one gets tight. So, would that work? Yeah, add a little bit to that. So now what happens is I go to tighten that. See, this is loose. So when I cut it, this thing is going to fall down until this one gets tight, and this is going to lift up. When that falls, this lifts. So if you're like right on the house with the limb, you could drop it and move it. You can start to do some tricks with this, which are really nice. Problem is when I make this cut, then it's cut, and like for some of the examples, it's going to be tough. Like here, I'll show you. If I wanted this to drop down, like I was just saying, this is how I would set it up. Now that's loose. That one's tight. I'm going to hook it up, and I'm just going to lock it off here, and then show you what it does when I cut it. See? It swings itself in and gets it into the system. The slower that was, like if I would have moved this in even more, it would have dropped even further. So that being tight in the system, from there, as that falls off of it, it does that same thing. It pulls this in, and then now, like I was saying, the middle of the V is now the lowering point. So the opposite of what I was just saying, if I wanted the tip to fall down some, I would just do the opposite. I would shorten this and make sure I keep it like that. And then what happens is when I go to tighten this, now this one's tight, but this one's loose. So it's going to fall, and you can maybe get some turning and stuff to happen if you leave the spider leg loose. But look, when it's hanging, now the tip could touch the house. If you have room, and you can go all the way around. And just remember, you now, that V is where the lowering point is too. So there's so many little tricks that you can use with a spider leg, setting it up. But a lot of times when you go to set this up, you're gonna go, you'll you'll have the guy tighten up after you get it set, and at least my luck, as they tighten it, it's not the way it's supposed to be. So then I have to tell them lower it back down, and then I adjust and adjust. So this becomes stationary rigging. And the reason it's stationary is because that piece is going to come off. Now it's off, it's just against the trunk there. It's stationary. It's the way that it was in the tree, it is still that way. So it didn't drop a shock load really into the system because of the smoothness and the way it was balanced when it came off. So you just have to, there's just a bunch of little tricks with that. And using a spider leg and getting good with it is a neat trick to have. I think all climbers should try it. And having 2 connection points, so much easier. Let's take this one off, and let's say I'm just going to try to predict where that middle point was at, like I was saying before. Let's see. And a lot of times I'll have my speed or my spider leg, I'll just leave it attached and then hook up, and I'm pretending that's where it's at. Now let's see. As it comes off. Nope. See, I was wrong. I didn't, I misjudged the weight out there. And a lot of times that's what'll happen. So I really needed to be probably somewhere out there. So when it came off, see, I went over. I didn't move that far. But because it's so tippy, you have to be in just the right spot because it's falling into the system. So you can see there wasn't a whole lot of distance that I moved that sling right there or that clip. I barely moved it. And it changed it from being tip tied to end over with just a little bit of movement, which is crazy. So what is Teen saying? Let's see. Oh, I don't even see him. Trav, Clement, very cool demo. Thank you. Oh, no problem. No problem, brother. My pleasure. Give me something to talk about. So, positive rigging. Your rigging and your rigging point is up above it. You have control. It's in your favor. Negative, the piece is now above your rigging point and it's going to fall into it, which is not the best for your ropes and your system and everything, but with the right setup, you still can do that. Negative rigging a bit trickier, a bit more dangerous, and there's more variables involved, so you have to remember that, and then the shock load, and then like the bend radius on the rope where it makes the smush. There's just so many little things, but rigging and knowing all these techniques are so important. Maybe you don't use some of them, but I promise they'll help you along the way just knowing them. So, and it's so nice when you show up to a spot and you have that trick that fixes it, because it's hard to have all the tricks, but when you're that guy that day, it feels so good. So he's up there thinking of another way to set this up. I like this stuff. Hey man, I'm a tree climber from Virginia. I've been watching your videos for years. It's cool to see you live. Oh, well, welcome, tree guy. Yeah, we try to do this every week at this time on this day. So what did we do? We did negative rigging, span rigging. Now, if we wanted to rig that piece there, here's a cool way to rig. So if I was rigging that piece and I was worried, so like I was worried that maybe I couldn't rig it on getting that stub out of the way, on a single stem, and I needed the two. So what I would do is I would span, if I'm worried one's not strong enough, I would just do a span between the two. So the way you would set that up is, different, but not that far off. So what I'll do is I'll take the clip off of this thing first. I'll take the spider leg off. I don't need it anymore. But I have a strong enough setup, and I'm going to use the same 2 points that I got here to rig from, because I know that these two are strong, and when they come together, they're gonna be the strongest instead of separately. So together, rigging here, that's gonna be plenty strong enough. I'm not worried about it at all. So here's what I would do. We're gonna pretend like this limb is still here. I'm gonna lift it back up in here in just a second, and we're gonna hook it up with a sling. The way we'll do it is I'm gonna add this clip to it. So what I'm going to, I guess, basically be making here is a speed line strap. I'll show you. So there, little speed line strap. Okay. Now, I would hook that up onto this limb, and because I'm worried, I would try to. This is where I got to pick that center point, or I need 2 speed line straps. I could do 1 speed line strap here and 1 there and get a wider spread of a grab, but then I need to clip them both, well, to the rope afterwards. And that works. You can do that. It's just I don't have multiple clips right now, so we're going to clip it with a single. I believe we were somewhere in there. And I'll show you it before I set it up, because I'm sure it's not the best visual right now. So here's where it gets a little weird. You're trying to figure out how to set this up. I would anchor this piece right here back to the stem. So now it's just tied off here, and it goes up to our ring, which is there, over to this ring. Here's the span I want to rig off of, right there. Here's the thing you want to remember, though. You're now going to be using twice as much rope as you were. So this, if you were normally rigging from there, you would only have this strip of rope. But now you have this and this. So it's going to use twice as much rope when you use this technique. But it's also going to share that crazy load between 2 pieces, two sections of the tree. So you would have this over here. You would bring this to that. And here's how I have that set up with like a speed line strap. And it would hook up here. I'll get it set up over here. We'll just pretend like it goes to this one actually. And then you would tighten up. So what you're left with then, okay, you're now rigging between these two, and I would probably, instead of being in the center, if this one was really in this location, I would actually go much higher. I would go somewhere up in here. I would tip tie, I would cut, and I would let that butt drop and go here, so this would go there. And it would just stand right there in that position. But it's still made. Yeah, it's pretty close, I guess, to that middle point. And what's happening now is you're rigging between them 2 pieces. So if it was out here, you made the cut, it's going to drop in. And now this is traveling on this span of rope, right there to there. That's why it's called span rigging. But like I was saying before, I'm all the way to the end of my rope, and I was only like halfway on all the other stuff. That's because twice as much rope, all that. But I'm sharing the load between that point and that point. So also, the reason you would use span rigging is, if I set this back up, let's see. So say you don't want to lower to that lowering point because it lowers out here. And you also don't want to lower to this lowering point because it lowers way out here. You would prefer to be like somewhere in the middle of those two. Well, that's why this is going to work so good for you, because these are pretty similar in height. So it's always going to travel to the low side, but as it comes off, it's going to travel down here a little bit, and you get that lowering point that you wanted without having to switch all your rings around. You can span between the two. So you get that down there, they unclip, and you've span rigged. It's a very useful technique, and a lot of times when I end up using it, it's because I'm looking for the right lowering point. And I can get that by using span rigging because I don't care what you do. I mean, unless you had a very long sling that would stretch all the way to here to the middle, you're going to lose a little bit of height no matter what. But you need a rigging point to be here. There's nothing there. So you can span rig between the two, and then you get that location. And it becomes more your benefit, and you get that spot that you're looking for. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you, tree guy. Um, little stuff. I'm not trying to sound like know it all. Oh no, you guys. There's that comment section. What's up, Chris? What is going on? So we've done. Damn, it's getting hot in here. Positive rigging, negative rigging, span rigging. We did balanced rigging with a spider leg, tip ties, end overs. We discussed those. Placing the rings and your false crotches is going to give you a weak, or you can make it as strong as your setup can be. So if you were forced to rig off this single stem, let me show you what ends up. Let me show you what I mean when I say you're going to get flex in that point, because I feel like sometimes that doesn't come across. When you're setting a rigging setup and you have negative space. So here's what I mean by negative space. Space in between the tree and the rope. Watch this space. Oh, what am I doing? All right, no, now watch this space. So you see all that space in there? This big gap right here? I can take that gap away by adding the ring. And if you notice, when they set up a fishing pole setup, there is very little negative space. That's when you get the strongest out of the tree, because you're causing compression. So I would go much closer, and if I ran it through here, now I've created somewhat of a fishing pole setup, and it's going to work and be a lot stronger than it would be without this ring being involved. So now, when I set this up, look at how little negative space there is. There isn't any. So put that rope out there. There's no negative space anymore because of the way I've set this up. I've caused compression here and there. Now when I start to get negative space, that's when I'm getting pulling and flexing that's going to happen. And that's the stuff where you end up having a failure. I don't even own climbing gear anymore. I just like watching. I do some bucket work, landscaping work. Oh, really? Right on, William. Well, I appreciate you giving me your time, man. I really do appreciate that, because people could be doing a lot of things. There's a billion things you could be doing out there. So anytime you guys give me your time and let me just ramble and you sit here through it, I really appreciate it. So I think basically, if I'm being honest, these live feeds are what's keeping my channel going, because the other stuff isn't like popping all that much. So all my trees are small. Yeah. So who's that? Gino Trees. Trav says, "What's your favorite rigging rope?" I really like All Gear's Husky bull ropes. They've been really good for me. So That's where I have the most experience with. I have a Samson half inch 12 string that I do a lot of rigging and like pulling trees over with. I like that rope. But I have 9/16 and a 5/8 Husky bull rope from All Gear. And I just cut the 5/8. It was a 240-foot rope. I cut it right in the middle just the other day. So, last video I put out. I use it for, for lift. It helps if the ground guy gets the pieces stuck in the tree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, a little bit of extra setup and knowing the tree, like now where you would normally have to rig little bitty sections, if you have a strong setup, it ends and you're rigging them off right, it ends up becoming light work. It becomes very easy, very methodical. Like it's those first couple where everybody's a bit suspenseful and you're like, how's it gonna work? Is it gonna work? And it just, what's gonna happen as the climber while you're up here is there's a bunch of chaos and crashing going on where a smooth ran rope, all that stuff doesn't happen. So there is another way to rig, and this is a bit of a new technique, but it's all over the internet, and I see it happening all the time. Um, there's a billion different ways that you can span rig. You can span, like, if you wanted, I guess you could span off, like, double span. I don't know why you really would, but you could go, like, from here to here, back over to here for some reason. Then you could rig off both, but you're going to get, like, pinching in the ropes. There's a billion different ways to span rig, and that's when you're rigging a piece off of a section of rope right here, and it would pull like most of it down, but it's going to cause a bunch of friction because now you got 4 legs of rope and you're using 4 times as much rope. That's silly to me. But there is a trick where if you're by yourself, you can rig and you can get your rope back. The problem with, let's pretend like we're by ourselves and we're climbing, we're trying to do this tree, and we're like, we got a bunch of limbs that we need to rig, but we get onto our first limb, all right? Our first limb, what are we going to do? Let's do this one. So we hook this first limb up, we rig it somehow up here as the climber. We managed to set our rope. Maybe we went around like, okay, here. I went around this little twig. And I would lock that off. A bunch of wraps around it. And that piece is sitting there. Well, I should have tightened it all the way first. There. I just tied it up. Did I just do it? What am I doing? Okay, so it's right there. You go close to it. You could rig this piece, and what's going to happen is it's going to swing over here. You're going to be able to go as you're climbing. After you cut it, it's hanging, and you start to lower it down, and now your rigging is basically over. What you could do is somehow get a hold of this end of the rope, get it over to you. Pull the whole rope back up to about right there. Tie on one more piece and lower it down. And then you could actually get 2 pieces on one rope. You do that same thing where you hook up over here and you cut that one off there. Now you're rigging off the other end and it lowers down. Now you got a limb on each end of your rope and you're done. So some guys do trees where there's a billion limbs. Those pine trees have tons of rungs of limbs. So people rack their brains for a while, I imagine, trying to figure out a technique to where they could get their rope back always. And somebody managed to figure it out. I don't know who the first one was that figured this out, but I do know that Meta Spencer has mastered it pretty much and seems to be the most efficient with it. So this is called endless loop solo rigging. And the way that this would work, I just tied it not for no reason. Um, However many speedline straps you have is how many you could do. So if you had a whole thing of speedline straps that got clips on them, you're pretty set, and you could do this for quite a while, for really as long as you need it. So the way this works is you're going to anchor this like you did before when you're span rigging. So anchor there. Okay, you pull your system tight. Okay, you can do this on natural crotch. You don't need these rings. So let's say the rope goes up through that natural crotch and then through this natural crotch. And I want to rig this chunk here. So the way I would set it up, I would use a speed line strap. Put this clip on it. And I'm just going to hook it up like this. And I'm going to span rig. Now, here's where I think maybe it's been confused online, is that people are just seeing it and then like mimicking it before they really go look at it and figure out, oh, okay, now I understand. So you're going to span rig off of this section, but you're going to be able to get your rope back every time. Watch. So you want to put it through things that you're close to. So I'm close to this crotch and I'm close to this crotch. If I was standing right here, I would hook this up. And remember, I have a bunch of speed line straps. Say you have like 12 of them. All right. Now I could go ahead, do like I did before. Have that piece there, and anchor it off here. Log it off. I could do like a half hitch. Then I cut it and it hangs. I lower, and as I lower the piece down, it gets all the way down there. So here's how this works. I can now grab this piece and just keep pulling on. Hang on. What did I do? Oh, yeah. I can grab that piece and just keep pulling on it, and it ends up pulling the whole rope out of the system. And you just pull it out of where you anchored it at. And now you got that limb on the ground with a speed line strap on it, and you just flick your rope up there, up over that, and then back to you. Reset it up, and now you're ready to span rig another limb. So we're going to do this one. We just use a different speed line strap. Now this is doing it without any rings, so a ring you're just going to have to reset it through the rings each time. So it could be, it's easier to do and quicker a lot of times with just natural crotch rigging. So I'm going to let that go out. I'm going to clip this in. Okay, I'll bring the rope back over. I'll go around the back side because the limb's going to crash here and I don't want it pinching my rope. So I'll probably bring it around the back side. Do a few reps. And then I'm able to cut. And it would drop. Yeah, it fell off the spot, but it's supposed to fall into it here, like that. And then you do that same thing where you just unhook your rope and then pull the rope through from right here again. And you would lower the limb down first, and it's on the ground, and you just pull your rope back through, all the way back through to yourself. And you flick it back up there over the crotch, and that's it. That's endless loop rigging or solo span rigging, retrievable span rigging. Yeah. So you're rigging off that point, and you can change it at any time. especially if you have other speedline straps, you can put the points really close. So if there's not, say there's not a spot to hook up there, I could easily take a speedline strap and just make me a spot really close to me so I could get it right back, the rope right back. Closer, the easier. So it would go like through that crotch, and then it would go over here, and then now I could rig that section up above it if I needed to without any trouble off of that right there. I could rig it down. It would go between the two. Same thing, I'd pull all the rope back out after I got it, and I could redo it as many times as I needed. It's span rigging with the anchor points close enough for you to retrieve and get back at all times. So you're setting up miniature span rigs on an endless loop. Hope that makes sense. That's what the endless loop rigging basically is. That would be my explanation of it. And I'm definitely not the end all be all. Like, I just have a whole lot of time into it. I've seen most of it. Brother. Pedro Roman, what up? Man, it is so hot. Hang on just a second. Let's go over here. I'm gonna crack the door open. Keep talking to you guys. But it is hot. I'm doing all right, Pedro. How are you? Long day, huh? Right on. Well, those are them ones where you feel like you accomplished something though when you get home. You really, there's only a few men out there walking around that could do that. So you should wear your pain and soreness proudly, brother. Not a whole lot. Oh yeah, I guess I have been. I moved my daughter into college. Wednesday. So that was a rough one. That was really a rough one to do. Howdy from Kentucky. Oh, right on. Yank Doodle. I think maybe Yank. Maybe I've heard you being talked to by Buckin. Maybe. Are you that Yank Doodle? A lot of work, man. Had a big tree today. Oh, right on, Pedro. That's good, dude. That's what you want. How you been? How do you feel about electric saws nowadays? Well, Gino, I don't know. That's a tough one, man. Because I'm seeing the effectiveness of them. The price point is too high still. For me personally, I don't think it's right. Hey, if you guys don't mind, you can hit that thumb button. I'd appreciate it. I won't ask you again, but if you haven't and you can, I would appreciate it. So I think the price is still too high on them. The charger battery combos between and the actual saw. If I'm giving somebody like my personal opinion, Craftsman. And I seen it was Zacchaeus. And I'm going to talk about Zacchaeus here in a second when we do the weekly news. You can go on Zacchaeus' channel and watch his video. When you watch his video, below it, it'll show products that he uses. And he uses is it Milwaukee? Or is it Craftsman? I think it's Milwaukee. I don't know. I thought maybe it's correct. I'm trying to think. Which one is it? I think it's Milwaukee. But the Milwaukee setup that he's got, they sell it, and it's not all that much. It's like $350, and that's for everything. You get battery, you get the saw, you get the charger. The problem with the other ones, like Steel and Husqvarna, I don't know what the price of DeWalt's is yet. but they're just too much. The saws like reasonable, and you would think the price like you're getting everything. That's with nothing. Then you then have to buy battery. You got to buy the charger, and a lot of times those are the price of the actual product. So yeah, I'm not that stoked on it. Yeah, yeah. I don't know about that. I'm bummed. I miss her. I've been friends with Bucking for several. Yeah, Yank. That okay? That makes sense because I'm like, no, there's not probably not a lot of people with Yank Doodle as their moniker. So yeah, that's awesome. I like Bucking. I just got a Milwaukee last week, and okay, yeah, Gino, I think that's it, brother. The Milwaukee's worth 350. Yeah, they gave me a free battery. Just had to buy the charger. It had to buy the charger. All that. Oh, okay, so that doesn't come with the charger. Really? Well, the only thing that's really nice about I like also about Milwaukee is like if you have any of their other products, like the batteries are interchangeable. Still does like a little they do a lot of little handheld stuff, and every one of them takes a different kind of battery. They you cannot cross batteries over with any of them. It's so aggravating. They don't have the best time. They have less torque, so it's like I haven't been all that stoked. I used a Milwaukee battery powered, probably the one you're talking about, top handle. It is a very powerful saw. It's got the torque that you need, but at the time it was a farmer's, and he was it's pretty heavy still too, but it wasn't the sharpest chain, so I had to give it back to him and ask for my 200. But yeah, I've heard Gino. I've heard a lot of good stuff about that Milwaukee. Yeah, Trev, I'm thinking like I've from what I'm seeing, they're performing really well. I don't think Steel has quite figured it out yet. There's a lot of aggravation for me with the lock settings on them and the torque. It I don't want a saw that's getting stuck in the cut all the time. Being able to make the cut without a stutter, without the saw cutting in and out, that can be just so important. You could that potential for that could be barber chair and it blowing up in your face or not. So like I take that kind of stuff extremely serious. I don't want a saw that's going to cut out in the middle of a cut. So Milwaukee, yeah, I think everybody's saying it now. Okay, just did a decent silver maple. One battery. Oh, right on, Gino. I used it on shagbark hickory. And it ran through it, you know, and that stuff is tough. I use Milwaukee at times for the quick trim jobs. Yeah, I still feel like it's pretty heavy though, that top handle, but I change it extra. Yeah, yeah, I know, ground pounder. Still prefer saws for takedown jobs. I already had a bunch of Milwaukee batteries and tools. See, that's where a lot of guys. That's where I feel like the Milwaukee's kind of cool because it's like oh, I already had these batteries. Pop it right in there. There you go. I think they make different size batteries so you can get a bigger one maybe. What I'm not liking is that I'm seeing that they're starting to put multiple batteries. Like, come on, get over it. Like, no. Make it work with one battery. I'm not buying two batteries for a saw. That is insane. But I'm seeing that they're starting to do that. That's stupid, in my opinion. But and I think if they're going to charge this kind of money for a battery powered product, every charger should be automatic shut off when the battery is at its full life. I've seen Cobalt battery powered stuff, and they don't have a shut off on the full charge for the batteries. You burn the batteries up. Brand new batteries, I think they get used one time, burnt up because people put them on chargers and then they just figure that after it's done charging it'll stop, and it doesn't, and it burns batteries up. So I don't know how Husqvarna, how Milwaukee, how all those are because like I said I don't own any of them, but I own a couple little steel battery powered and it's kind of fun. Yank, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think Milwaukee it stands right next to any of the other ones. Um, I'm seeing that the Husqvarna has been really the company that has got it figured out. It seems I've never used one of those, but for the price that you have to pay to get everything and have one, it better be an amazing machine because the price is outrageous. So I need to get into news before I get too late here. What saddle are you running now? I'm considering getting a monkey beaver. That's cool. Yeah, Gino. I mean, everyone swears by him. My old saddle was this, Gino. It is a Cougar, Weaver Cougar. Loved it. It was a good transfer over for me. That gave me like 10 years of use. So it was a good transfer from a butt seat Weaver to, leg straps. I run the Weaver Stratus. It's right here. Actually, I don't have the actual saddle, but I have the pamphlet and stuff. So it's extremely lightweight. See how high the back is on this and how low it goes to? I believe August just now is starting to come out with I'll talk about it in the news that's coming up, but he's doing a high-waisted Monkey Beaver 2.0 now because of he's dealing with some back issues, so he wants more support. That's something that I've always been a stickler for. My dad had a really bad back, and I just was always worried about getting a bad back, but this one, the Cougar, had quite a wide back originally. I believe out of most saddles, it was pretty wide back in comparison. But the Stratus, when I got it, it was much wider in the back. It's a little bit more. It's very padded, but it's rigid. The outside is, and it's like a composite, some like almost like carbon fiber feeling weird kind of. I don't even know what it's made of, but it is the lightest saddle I've ever put my hands on. So may look at the Stratus. That would be my recommendation, especially price wise too. So if price is not an option, it would be really cool to be able to afford, a Monkey Beaver 2.0 and have it customized and get like exactly your stuff. Man, that would be the ticket. Like I get why everybody does it. I just not practical for me. I would. There's no way I could justify me spending that extra amount of money on that saddle. Um, I just have so many other things going on that would take my money long before that would ever be an option. That's why my last saddle gave me a decade worth of use. I I use it till it falls apart. So I was just gonna ask if anyone had any Monkey Beaver saddle experience, been considering getting one running a Petzl Sequoia now. Oh, right on. So the Monkey Beaver 1.0 is basically a new tribe Onyx with a wider back. Yep. Yeah. That's that's always been my understanding of it. It's a new tribe saddle that he originally would just put his name on. Originally, Onyx, I think, was they were making it and it was called the Monkey Beaver saddle, and they were doing it for him with his name on it. And then he started to make them himself. So maybe he's got a. I don't know what the specifics are as far as that goes, but I know that was what it was based on, and I think they were helping originally when they were first starting to come out. Don't quote me on it. I'm not like a Monkey Beaver historian, but I try to keep up with it as much as I can. But the Monkey Beaver 2.0 is all August, baby. Right on. I don't know. Ground pounder. Every he didn't like break a mold or nothing, man. If I'm being honest, I'm not trying to like downplay it or nothing, but like he didn't. It's very similar to the Monkey Beaver 1.0, right? It made all those improvements in comfort and fit and like but I thought the layout was, maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, it's never even really been an option for me, so it was one that I overlooked. Like I thought it was awesome. Every time somebody got one, like I was very very jealous, but like I can't afford it. So Monkey Beaver is a lot of money. After checking out the Stratus, I would not hesitate to buy one. Oh, right on. I have a 1.0 and Dano does as well. Really? Yeah, I'm considering telling a client to order me one for a job because I can't see me spending $1,000 on it. So, yeah, hey, that would be nice. Tell him to order me one too, Gino, please. No, I think it's so awesome that people support his channel and stuff though. And if you have it and you can do it, I say do it. I mean, I don't have expendable money, but like I'm the guy that when I go pick up my pizza, when they make it, like I pick it up and I tip. Like they're used to me handing them a 5 as I walk in to grab my pizza and walk out. If you have it, do it. Do it. Like take care of those who take care of you, and entertaining you is a form of you know that's worth something. If you can, and I get it. I love being able to help and support people. It's just at times I don't. Mm, it's just out of my price range. I've bought everything else. Like I always rep a sticker on my hard hat, on my vehicles, like shirts. Yeah, so I've done that ever since I've ever seen his channel. But the products have just been, I can't really afford them. I may do a drink holder though. I kind of need a good drink holder, but at the same time, I may go to Lowe's and just go buy like a $10 drink holder. So I don't. I say do it if you got it, and I think it's awesome if you guys do. Anyone using a pencil zigzag swivel? Pros and cons. The swivel is where it's at, Yank. Like I didn't much care for the fact that like you would have to set it up, your saddle up a specific way to where you would have the device oriented in the right position. That's one thing I don't like about a lot of devices, the way you have to set them up, because I want that device to me to be able to turn it and do as I please. I want to orientate it the way that I want, that's the most comfortable to use. And with a swivel, the ability to do that is there. The issue is the adding of a swivel is a potential failure point, which I get why people get sketched out on it. So I use one, and my guy Jared Sprague, knee nigget, he is the feller who gave it to me, and I've used it for quite a while. I used it on a rope wrench, and even whether it's DRT or it's SRT, the zigzag with swivel is awesome. My son is in a notch centennial. That's cool. Stuff's expensive, man. It's about what we. Yeah. I bought a monkey beaver harness, suspenders, 100% worth it. Right on, Chris. That's cool, man. See, that's the best part. Is like I'm glad that I love those guys that are like, I bought it. It cost a lot, but I love it. Like that's you made the right decision. You 100% made the right decision. So I'm gonna do the news that I have because I spend a lot of time doing notes all week, like pages and pages and pages of notes. So let me do. I don't want to think that I did all this for no reason, and we're like an hour and 24 minutes already. So I do want to get into it. I should have been almost done for now. Find anything on TV? I had a Buckingham International for 10 years before the monkey beaver harness. Hey, you guys, sometimes we gotta use them until they're toast. So I respect it, and I'm in the same boat, brother. I need a new harness, but everything is so expensive. I don't understand. Try the Weaver Stratus. As far as price point, that's a really good a good saddle, you could go with a Cougar, um, and it's a very good saddle, and it should be priced pretty low by now. So yeah, Weaver products are usually priced very affordable, so maybe check them. That's what I climb on. Um, Valentine Rito. The 1.0 is 100% worth it every penny. Right on. Spend what you can. It is up to you. Upgrade as you can. Yep. Time. If you're making money doing tree work, put the money into the equipment before you spend it on stupid shit. Yeah, yeah. But I think it would be spending it on stupid shit if I went and bought a monkey beaver saddle right now when I have a brand new Weaver one. So in the same situation, there's guys that will spend and they sometimes you don't need. I mean, I've been guilty of doing that. Like, and when I first started buying gear, I just bought so much gear. There's so many pieces of gear that are in my gear bag that I've maybe used once or twice. So I try to, kind of like a tattoo, if I'm going to get it, I need to think that it's a good idea for a while, and then a period of time later, still think it's a good idea before I'm going to do it. So I'm 40 years old, man. Like, I've made enough silly mistakes for myself that I can't like justify them anymore and be okay with it. Like, try to put a kid through Mizzou, which is gonna be rough, but I'll make it happen. So you're 50, get her done, brother. That is so awesome. Don't have any fancy shit. Yeah, I don't really either. Okay, said check out Gap Supply. Yeah, yeah, Dano's right, or Dan K's right. Gap Arbor Supply. That's where those guys. Actually, I'm like giving Weaver. Yeah, thanks for saying something, Dan. I'm giving Weaver like all this like shout outs. Gap Arbor Supply is the company that sent me that saddle. So you know, once again, Chris, I just got super. I'm very blessed, and like I couldn't afford it. I would still be on that old one with it falling apart, but they blessed me with this one, and like I can't say I'm a beggar. So, but beggars can't be choosers. Like I'm very appreciative of what I got. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, yeah, but I think Chris is right too. You also need to try to always let that equipment keep the upkeep on it, put it back in. Don't wait till things are falling apart completely and breaking down. So Chris is not wrong. He's definitely right, but more efficient by learning the gear you have. Yeah, 100%. A lot of times I think we have this go mentality. Learn the next thing. Learn the next thing. Learn the next thing. Learn the next thing. And there's so much to learn and to keep up with now that was never there before. Um, at my age, I got to experience before social media and after, and like you didn't need to know anything. Like my dad didn't have social media; he'd never seen anybody do tree work. He figured it out. So it's like, I don't know. I think sometimes guys are too quick to like maybe see a technique, they mimic it, especially if they also like make videos, they'll like mimic it real quick and show it, and then it's like they've logged it as if they know it, and then they just move on. And being efficient with a few techniques will get you further, in my opinion, than knowing a billion and not really knowing them all fully. Like, look at a guy like Randy is the Mandy. Randy probably knows a lot of ways to do tree work, but he's very efficient at, the old school methods and is very good at it. So he just gets her done. I don't think it's that he couldn't be swinging around on a rope wrench, doing, double whip rigging. I think he probably knows all that stuff, but he knows what gets it done and what's efficient for him. And that is going to change from person to person to person to person. That's just my opinion, but I mean, to each their own too. How long have you been climbing? I would say 25 years, 26 or so. Um, I mean, I climbed some like here and there. Never really is like working, like actually being the climber. Like I climbed, learned how to use spikes and stuff at a very young age. My dad raised me. That's what he did. As I, that's what he did for a living. So me and my brother both kind of figured it out. I have a younger brother. He's like 4 years younger than me. But yeah. So we would mimic what we had seen. We didn't really know everything. Like I'd say like around 15, I really got to like maybe I would climb and really. I hear somebody screaming bloody murder outside. That's crazy. That was scary. Yeah, I would say about 25 years. I'm 40, so like at 15, I would go and get it done. Like I was the guy, and I definitely wasn't the best, and it wasn't like I was running up the gnarliest ones, but I would be in the rotation. There would be days where I would do it, and so I would say from then I felt comfortable anytime I put them on, but I stuck to the basics until I was probably 30 or maybe even a little bit into my 30s. I didn't know anything about any of this other new stuff of SRT and false crotch rigging and all these fancy gadgets and stuff. I knew how to do a taut line hitch with a rope and a clip and how to rig natural crotch with a rope. So the coolest tool and the only tool that we used when I was younger was a maze dam. My dad for some reason always knew about a tree jack, which is really crazy because like still I run into tree guys that don't know about that. But it's just a winch jack that runs a rope that you put a rope through. So they make them with cable and stuff, but with the cable ones, they end up you can get them at a point where you can no longer use them and you got to extend them back out because they're running on like a 5-to-1 or something. But with a rope one, you can pull as much as you want until the rope's done or you hit a knot. So, but yeah, that was the coolest tool that we ever had and the only tool. So all this stuff was very like unloaded on me. I tried to do my best to figure it all out, and I think I was very guilty. Um, Now better gear most of the time. Better say, yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right, Chris. A lot of the newer stuff is fixing those safety flaws and stuff, and advancing it, making it more comfortable, and and yeah, the price of living is never. It's not going to go down, so all that stuff's got to go up with it. So has suspenders and leg pads. Oh, what is the size? What's who said ground pounder? What's the size? If you're a 32 for Weaver, or here's the. They actually have a chart, I think, in here. Maybe. Let's see. I thought they had like a little chart somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong. But like if you're a 32 waist, I would stay on the small side. I'm a 32 waist, and when I got the saddle, it was a bit. I had a lot of extra strap that I had to sew up and get rid, hide and stuff. So 9 years old, waist size. I'm a 35, 36 waist, which he'd be a medium for sure. Maybe even getting to the large side. I don't know. Would you say GP extra large? That's funny. I'm not large. 32 waist. Yeah, yeah. I would say you could get away with a small, but you're going to be on the very far end of small, like extended all the way out, and you will be all the way to the end, like to the smallest setting if you're doing medium. So I got a medium. Mine is on the smallest setting basically, and I just took for granted because I'm like 6 foot 1 or 2, like that. I'm like I'm not small, and I was small, but yeah, whatever. The large has plenty of room with it on me. Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a 36 pant size, but I like to have a little room. I would say probably a large then. Um, the adjustability on that Stratus is unreal. There's so many adjustable like areas on it, and the range is very, very. There's a wide range on it. So old school method, candy stripe, the tree. You don't have a porter wrap, works good. And then furs, yeah. The only issue is when you're doing any natural crotch rigging or you're doing wraps and stuff like that, and you're dealing with furs or evergreens, you're gonna get sappy ropes. It's gonna ruin your ropes. Any natural crotch rigging is friction that is harmful to the ropes. So like it's not as like you're gonna get much longer use out of your ropes using false crotches like rings and pulleys and stuff. But yeah. Pear-shaped people don't make very good tree guys. Look how stillborn shaped. Yeah, you know what's funny is I get random people all the time that like I just the other day I don't even know what. Oh yeah, I had a tree surgeon shirt on, but he was like, "You a tree climber?" Yeah. The more I climb, the less I find myself needing. I enjoy being able to simply simplify the tree removal process and bring up minimum equipment with me. Yeah, but I totally get that, Valentine. I find myself getting more into that mode, but there are times where I would just use a certain technique just to use it. You know, I like to refresh myself every once in a while. Can anyone tell me? I don't know myself. 400. Oh shoot. Okay, where are you located, GP? Okay, so the news last week. So with the news, I like to do like half of the channels we'll talk about are bigger channels, but I do like to do some smaller channels to bring some attention to them. So it's probably always going to be kind of that mix. If like your favorite YouTube tree guy isn't mentioned here, it's not that I don't watch them. It's that maybe I just didn't catch it this week. But so let's start out with Veterans Tree Service. He's very entertaining. They make really good videos. I like him. He actually bought a timberjack, a 53-ton timberjack, which is really cool. But I personally I don't really like them. I would just rather set a rope and pull a tree over as opposed to jacking a tree up. I feel like the potential of breaking the hinge and lifting it off and pulling the fiber is there. But some of them guys use them and they're wizards with them. So that's really cool to see. It's the square bottle jacks that go, you make a cut into the tree and you set it inside of it, and it actually lifts and it's on a spring to where it will settle sideways and lift. But not all that much though. So I think getting a high point, but so I guess sometimes you can't get that perfect pull with a rope, the direction you. Yes, you can. You can, but I don't know. They do it different with logging, which I find it really cool. It's very entertaining. But yeah, he bought a timberjack. I don't know how much. He didn't really say. His first video that I seen, or no, his first one was this rigging point paid off big time for this tree removal. So I think a lot of times guys misjudge trying to get limbs to swing. They just kind of discount gravity, so they try to put a side notch. And if you try to come in on a side notch without pre-tension onto the rope, a lot of times it's failing. Um, be careful when you get in those positions where you're on a stem and you're rigging and the rope can go across you. Those are always sketchy. But yeah, that video was he's a good climber. His whole team is pretty good. His second video was removing a tree over a fence, basic rigging techniques. Um, this is where I decided to show the endless loop rigging because that's what he did some rigging. He called it endless loop rigging, so he just had the terminology wrong. I think if I'm remembering right, he was span rigging is what he was doing, but not exactly, but very very similar. So that's where I got the idea to go ahead and show that. Okay, I'm sorry if that cut out, but I gotta make this quick because my daughter's calling for her nightly conversation. Yeah, it's late. So yeah, so he put out another video. That's where he did the rigging. Or no. He called it. This is what happened. Now I remember. He did some rigging in the video where you go on a rope and you set up prussics down the rope. And what you can do is you have a rigging rope, a rigging set up in the air, and you can attach prussics, just like we did the spider leg, small ones, and then straps, and you can rig and have like a limb hooked here, hooked here, hooked here, hooked all the way down the rope, and they won't slide down the rope. They'll stay stationary. So that's what he was doing. That technique specifically, I've only seen used by Reg Coates. Reg is a wizard when it comes to tree work. He is extremely smart. He's came up with so many he's the first guy I've seen do so many things. So yeah, he kind of broke my pet peeve in the video. Like, use the technique. Maybe he just didn't know. He just seen the technique, someone else use it, and decided he was going to do it. But I try to give that attention to the guy who really has it mastered, because while maybe I'll show you a technique, I want you to go to the guy who knows that technique, like in and out a lot of times. So yeah, he was using that technique and he called it endless loop rigging. I don't know what you would specifically call that. Um, Reg is the man, a tree guy. You are absolutely correct. Um, I want to be fair. Okay. You having a combo there? Right on. Yeah, Reg is amazing. But yeah, you could set up, if you're rigging, you could set multiple ones up and they would stay stationary on the rope because of the prussics. So the prussics would, you could, as many of them as you wanted to hook up, you could hang out many limbs and then lower them all at once. That's what that technique a lot of times is used for, that I've ever seen. But you could kind of use that in a spider leg form if you really, really wanted to. But it's not as easy as a normal spider leg. But then August, Haneke put out quite a bit of stuff. First one I seen was, should you train them if they're just gonna leave? In that video, he showed and used the high backed saddle for maybe the first couple times. He did a crispy Lombardi poplar, and you just used the Panther bar again. So far, so good. It seems like it's doing pretty good from what I'm seeing. Talked about monkeybeaver.com. Oh, and he's a salesman at heart. You can see it. Like, deep down, he's a salesman. He's always got something going on, and it's just, he's good at it too. I am so not that guy. So like, I admire when people have that just gift of gab. Um, but he was talking about his niece, and I think he was asking, should you even train them if they don't like respond back and show excitement and this and that? Like, yeah, you should, because even Jake, like my guy, he doesn't like, you wouldn't know he likes something until you ask him. Then he'd be like, oh, I love it. And you're like, whoa, okay, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. Because if you just went off the way he interacts with you, the way he talks, the way he's just very quiet. He's very no nonsense, just straight up. Not a whole lot of emotion. So I personally would have thought that if you went off the way he looks while he's working sometimes, and He's just a guy that's maybe a thinker. Like he's sometimes thinking about stuff, and like I'm probably that same way. Uh, doesn't mean that I'm not retaining stuff, but until I become comfortable, it's hard to want to be vocal. So I would say that's probably even more the case in his situation because it's actual family. So it's just some of those people you need to just ask them like, "Are you liking this?" And maybe you give them that door that they're like, "Actually, no, I'm not liking it, but I didn't want to offend you and this and that," and you can stop it before it goes any further. Or you're gonna find out right then, yeah, and then you can go keep going strong with teaching them. So some people just gotta ask. Like you gotta straight up just ask them. Zacchaeus. That's where you can go check out on the Milwaukee Saw. Backyard locust tree removal with Osage John was his video for the week. He used that Milwaukee saw, and it's a really cool saw. It's a very cool saw. Apparently, John had a bummer. His trailer or his like truck maybe jackknifed a little bit, pressed on the chipper, so they couldn't use the chipper that day. So it was just a bunch of cutting in this video. But one thing I did notice and something I've always wanted to talk about is that even though a GRCS is really really cool and you can crank up on stuff, you ain't letting it run. So that's one thing to remember. So try to help a 17-year get started climbing, but don't remember a knot to save his. Oh no! Any ideas? Yeah, give him a chunk of a piece of rope to take with him. Sometimes they just need to do. So um, I would just give them a piece of rope. Like if that was the case, I would send this. I would send this home with my ground guy. I'd say, there you go, and I'd show him a knot, and then tell him, don't untie that knot. This is the way I would do it. All right. I would say, I want you to learn a bowline. So I would tie a bowline. Then I would tell him I'd like mark it so I can make sure that. Well, you don't have to. You can just quiz them when they come in the next time. But I would tie him a bowline, have it set up. This is the way I want it. I want to stop or not. I want all this. Do not untie this until you like unless you know what you're doing to tie it back. So as you are untying it, you need to check it out, look at it, what goes around back there, then even maybe take a picture with your phone if you need to be able to go back and retie it. Tell him, take that piece of rope, you tie the knot, take a picture on his phone or a little video of you doing it, and tell him, go home, practice it when you got time, when you feel comfortable, when you're in a learning mood, and I want to see you do it when you come back. So you could try that. That would be the way I would probably go around or go about it. Sorry. Okay. Perfect. He will get it. My boy has about 25 foot of 5/8 cracking. There you go. Yeah, and you can do all kinds of stuff. You can do so much practicing with that stuff. So you don't need a whole lot of rope to get a lot of good practice in and know how to tie a lot of things up. And when they get, sometimes you just gotta instill. I notice with some of the younger generation, they need you to give them a little bit of confidence to get them going. Find something that they do that you're like, dude, you're good. Like you're really, and that little bit of positive reinforcement will get them going. I personally wasn't showing Jake in the best way for him to learn originally. And I realized that like he's not a guy that goes with the barking like straight face serious. He's more of a positive influence kind of guy, and he learns so much better when I'm not putting that excessive amount of stress on him. I'm used to some guys, that's the way they want to do it. That's kind of the way I was taught. You know, old school guys are a bit hard ass, so I try to do that, and it just doesn't work. So you got to figure out your ways with everybody, and everybody's going to be a little bit different. But yeah, so August put that out. Then he put out Right Tool for the Job. Him and Damien are just what a team. Like with a good ground guy, those two are amazing together. So I think on this video I have wrote down just straight up smooth operation. August climbed, Damien ran the crane, and they're both so good. You can flip them back and forth whichever way you want, and they're both very, very, very good. So incredibly entertaining as it normally is. Cutting a big oak for no reason is just an entertaining video. A bit shorter than his normal videos, but extremely entertaining as always. Back to the news. Yeah, I'm trying, man. I'm trying to get through it so I can call my daughter, but he's been with us a little over a year now and don't have a father in his home life. Been trying to be there for him. You know what? Jake, I think maybe even though he wanted to the army and stuff, like there's just some the guys you don't realize that these guys will look up to you before they and like you could be you can make such a good like he can become so good. I didn't realize like even just straight up the way I handle some things like I feel like Jake's like a even though I'm not a lot older than him, he's like I can look at him like I'm like a proud dad when I see him do stuff that's just above what I ever thought he could do. And he's been very amazing. So it's been cool to see, and I'm extremely proud of him. So, like, you just don't know. You got to figure out your way with everybody. Everybody's going to be a bit different. So, getting really good running. He's getting really good running. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's. I'm telling you, that is one of the hardest things in the world. Then getting good at running a chainsaw is another thing that is very difficult. You want them to be confident with it, but you want to. The problem with tree work is sometimes we will dump too much info on a person every day, and they don't retain any of it because you overflowed them. And in the process of trying to process all of it, they dump the whole load. Now they have nothing. So you got to be weary that you're not doing that. So yeah, yeah, you can definitely you can influence a person's life and not even realize it. I've had some of the kindest words like that humbled me to no end by some guys that I'm so stoked that I could even impact them at all. So it's really cool. I work with two women. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they're a rare breed that can even do it. So, and what do you guys prefer? Or hang on. And then August did part two of the ivy monstrosity. That was a gnarly tree. If you guys are interested in a good playlist, I have a playlist on mine. His ivy monstrosity reminded me of the one I did, and it was literally 70-foot bush of ivy that had a hidden dead maple tree inside of it. I had a big mistake in it, and that kind of what would you guys prefer? Do you guys prefer a channel and a creator that gives you everything and will show the mistakes, or would you prefer more of a Hollywood approach? Because like in the playlist that I was going to tell you to watch, I end up breaking a section of fence. I could have very easily cut that out. It was like 2-3 minutes worth of footage, and I had hours worth. So I could have cut that out and just looked like the coolest guy in the room. But instead, I'm like, oh, there's a lesson I could maybe learn off this. I'll use this and see how maybe it'll impact or help somebody along the way. So that's like, what do you like? Do you like honesty or badassery? Because like, there's two different kinds of tree YouTube guys, and sometimes there's guys that are a mix in between. So I want honesty because I feel like as a viewer, when someone does something like that and you see every clip except for the clip where the action happened, and it clips like, and then every other cut, like you'll see every part of it, but in one it just magically clips and it's away. It's like, huh? Why did I not see that clip? Um, Sometimes maybe that's camera malfunctions. Other times I think that's guys being a bit sneaky and they want to look cool. Like, I don't have an ego. You don't have to like me. That's okay with me. Um, I'm me. I can't change. I'm too old to be changing. So I'm just a guy providing for the household, sir. That's it, Chris. And you should I respect the hell out of you for that. So um Meta Spencer did a video called We Chipped 50 Trees. He did a great job removing a mess of trees. He went above and beyond on the cleanup process, which was really cool of him. And once again, he had a little bit of help, which is very rare for Spencer. So that was his last video. We chipped 50 trees. Then another smaller YouTube channel that I've been following, and I like their country. Their country, kind of like myself. It's JLM Tree Service. He did hazard tree removal, tree work, and cranes. He literally, this is the part I've never seen anybody do this, but he had the crane ordered only to as a tie-in point. So he did the whole tree and used the crane for the tie-in because the tree had a crack in the base of it, a couple cracks. So me personally, I think that's where it's going to change. The opinions are going to go back and forth. Um, if it's not your operation, you're not worried so much about profit margins. So you're like, get a crane. Like that's what I want. Now, if a smaller operation and a guy's running his own thing and he showed up there, he's going to try to do it without the crane because the tree still looks to be healthy. Um, but that's what's cool about all this. It varies from person to person. So operation to operation. So yeah, check out that video. That was hazard tree removal, tree work, and cranes. Then he put out This is Hollow and This is Rotten. It uprooted. Um, in that video, he was asking about a climbing device. He was talking about the Uni. So if he sees this, the Unisender is what you were talking about. He kept asking, like, it's this device. He started explaining it. Then he started to say you can get these modifications and stuff, like the drum. He said Rion, but then I think he corrected himself. It's actually Richard Mumford. And I appreciate the fact that he was trying to give correct info or credit to the person that deserves it. So that's something I don't see on YouTube. I really thought that was awesome when I seen it. So J306, Jay is cooler on the other side of the pillow. He put out box elder removal. He had obstacles everywhere. There was absolutely like no drop zone for this thing. Did a hell of a job. Then he put out a video called Dropping Trees Like I Dropped Car Thieves. I smashed it. He just did awesome. He's and he said it's only his third day, which is amazing. He's very good for only 3 days. So then Giorgio Fiore, one of my favorite tree climbers in the world, put out a video called Tree Climbers Day 2024. It's a gathering they do across the pond. Seattle Tree Care put out 1, 2, 3, 4 videos. Accident on the job. There was a malfunction. Maintenance and upkeep is always a must on the equipment because then it breaks down. It stops your whole operation when you get dependent on the equipment. There was an injury where a guy got his finger smashed by some mats. You gotta stay crazy aware Like we let our guard down when we get out of the tree, or we're not running the chipper. But so much of what we do is extremely dangerous. Smashes fingers, accidents can happen at any time. Guilty of treason put out removing a tree 150 foot in the air. Um, he also was experiencing a bit of issues with his Avant, and he said like more equipment, more problems. It may save your back, it may be nice at times, but more equipment, more problems. Randy had an injury in this video, did something to his wrist. So Justin Sizemore, I had the privilege of meeting Justin at TCIA Expo. He came up to me, stopped me. I'm a very like stick to myself kind of guy. He found me, stopped me, told me to watch the videos, shook my hand. That was really cool. So Justin actually went to go help them on this day. Did a bunch of the bucket work. Looked like he had a blast. And Jake said something that just blows my mind. He says he feels safer and more efficient with only a buck strap. Now, you may feel, this is where I disagree. I love Jake and Guilty of Treason there. I love the content. I love, like, he's one of my favorite. But you're, I don't want to call anybody any names. You're, can't be telling the truth that you feel safer with a buck strap than you do with your tie-in. I understand the worry is not there of your rope getting stuck in the chipper isn't there if you don't have it, you're not using it, it's hanging off your hip, but you're not safer. Ground Pounder Dan Dan the Tree Man put out transfer rigging with GP and Dan Dan the Tree Man. They just amazing video as far as rigging. That's on Ground Pounder's channel. The setup that they did probably took a bit of time, but was well worth it in the long run. They had a very smooth operation, and it worked really, really good. Yeah, trees. I guess they get featured 2 weeks in a row. They put out just showing them they're still grinding, having fun, and making the best of some crappy situations sometimes. Love all their videos. Buckin put out a video. This could be your new business. Talking about like everybody could go out and do tree work. I don't know if that's really the case. Love bucking, but everybody can't just do tree work. It's a special breed. But I think if you think you can, I think you should try. I think everybody should try. And he was saying like some guys complain, like even YouTubers, because they're complaining like all this editing takes so long, this that. Like yeah, it does. But some people are stressed until they find financial security and like your finances are not so much concerned. With that, with financial security, it will bring peace of mind always, and you'll be a much calmer person. So like, yeah, some people are stressed, so they're straight up with their audience. They let them know they'll complain. Like sometimes I feel like I complain too much. And last, this is another new channel, ZD Climber. I just subscribed to his channel. I've seen some of his videos maybe before, but he put out removing a crispy dead oak on a hill. This was an awesome video. The rigging was insane. They had a little bitty drop zone on this crazy gnarly hillside, kind of like Dan Dan and Ground Pounder setup. And they rigged everything down. The climber seems to understand some of those tricks when it comes to tip tying, which I dig. And because I don't see a lot of guys using those techniques and really maybe even knowing that they could. But I seen him using some. I was really stoked on it. One thing he needs to kind of watch out for, if I'm just critiquing, which take it or leave it, rope on rope contact. When you have rigging ropes going over your climbing rope and you're running limbs, it will burn straight through your rope very, very quick. But his ground crew did absolutely amazing. His rope guy, like perfect. He's so good. And the climber, amazing too. So check out ZD Climber. Check out Ground Pounder. Yeah Trees. Buck and Billy Ray. Guilty of Treason. Seattle Tree Care, Giorgio Fiore, J306, Veterans Tree Service, August Honeyke, Meta Spencer, Zacchaeus, and JLM Tree Service. Guys, that's this week. That's episode 19. I'm toast. I'm hot. I gotta go talk to my kid. I'll catch you next week. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And have a very safe and productive week next week. Thanks for hanging out. See you next time.